Welcome to another episode of Digging Deep. We're back on location here at our Bulb Fulfillment Center. And I've got Cody here with us. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Cody Wynot. I'm the horticulturist at Veseys.
And we also have Jeremy here as well. Jeremy?
I'm Jeremy Bolton. I'm the bulb manager at Veseys Bulbs.
All right, and you can see that we've got our table full of gorgeous plants. When did the greenhouse plants arrive?
So we just received this newest shipment of greenhouse plants on Tuesday, and as you can see, they're already looking great. A lot of things are in flower. These aren't the type of dormant plants that you would get with the rest of our offerings. These are going to come alive, flowering, and ready to go into the ground for you to enjoy today.
I'm eyeing up this hydrangea right now, and there's a rose got a flower coming, and the cedar's catching my eye.
Oh yeah,
I'm already planting places in my yard where I can plant them.
As am I. It's very tough to resist when you work here.
So I was walking down here to get everything set up, and I saw this piece of paper, and it says mold on bulbs and roots. Sometimes during storage and shipping, mold can form on bulbs. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and why it's not as big deal as you might think it is?
Absolutely. So this is something that is a common complaint whenever you're shipping any dormant plant material. Sometimes a little bit of moisture will accumulate on the bulb or the root, and a little bit of blue mold can develop on the surface. You don't have to worry about that. You can plant it and it will come up exactly the same. It's just something that can happen during the shipping process, but you can guarantee that it won't affect your flowers whatsoever.
So basically, this is just like a little bit of surface mold. It's not affecting the bulbs.
Exactly. It's not a fungus within it. It's just something that happens, when things are dug up out of the wet ground, and then they're shipped. Sometimes that can result in a little bit of mold on the surface, but nothing to worry about.
All right, I have some questions that I came up with. These aren't customer questions. These are my questions, and I thought a good place to start would just be talking about why we do send things dormant and why things are maybe a little bit smaller than you get in the greenhouse. So my first question, what are the benefits of planting dormant roots instead of established plants?
So dormant roots are easier to plant. You don't have an active growing plant, so when you go to plant it, it's not going to go through that same transplant shock. You're going to water it like you would any other plant. You're going to put a little bit of bone meal in the hole, some compost, that sort of thing. But the best part is once it's there, you'll water it once, and then it's kind of just going to grow slowly with the rest of the plants, as opposed to buying, a rose bush in the middle of summer. When it's 30 degrees, you've got to watch it so carefully that it's not going to dry out. That's basically the best thing.
Yeah, you're totally right, Cody. And it's also comes down to dormant plants are much more low maintenance. So during the shipping process, that's something that you really want. So if I take, this is Juliet Hardy Cherry. It's a very neat little cherry shrub, and this is not dormant, as you can see. So each one of these leaves, you have to think that they're like little solar panels, and they're drawing in solar energy, and they're turning that into energy by mixing it with sugars and water. So if this is dormant, that process isn't happening. The plant is essentially asleep. So if you receive something that's more dormant, you don't have to worry about giving it water. You don't have to worry about giving it sun. You just have to worry about sort of keeping it cool to keep it kind of the way it would be in winter. That is just sleeping and waiting for the spring. Whereas this little guy, we have to keep it moist, and we have to take care that the leaves are in good condition because it's already going through the process of photosynthesis. So if you remove it from the light and you remove the water, it's not going to be very healthy by the time it reaches you.
And something we don't have to worry about here on the island, especially with the cherries, another thing mainlanders have to worry about is the deer coming by and chewing on the cherry tree leaves.
Thankfully, we don't have any deer here. It's quite incredible.
Yep.
I do have rabbits, I must say.
I warned you about those rabbits. Now, are there any specific techniques for planting dormant roots to ensure a successful growth?
Always bone meal is the number one thing. You want to make your hole 1.5 times the size. Some good organic matter like compost and manure. Cover it so it's just covering the crown, or the crown is just poking into the soil surface, and then mulching, and then you should have good success.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we sometimes recommend to people is giving it a little bit of a soak before it goes in the ground. That's always a good thing. Essentially, because it's coming from a refrigerated place where we are, a refrigerated facility, once it's shipping and getting to your door, it's more at room temperature, and so it's going to start to wake up. So if you're soaking the roots, you're getting those roots ready for absorbing water again, so when they do go in the ground, it's going to be much easier for them to start drinking water and waking up.
Yeah, and that was a great point we were just talking about before we started this. Was I was planting some roots I gotten from here this past weekend, and the bags have little perforated holes on them, so you just take them, put them in a bucket, push them underwater until the bubbles stop, so they soak up enough water, leave them sit for a couple of hours, and when I'm ready to plant, pull them out individually. Still in the bags, they're not going to mix up, they're well hydrated, good to go.
Yeah, exactly. So these are the bags that you would receive your plants in. This is a type of color changing grass we have called chameleon little blue stem, and it's kind of hard to see, but well, it's impossible to see from where you're sitting, but this is a perforated bag. So as Cody said, it means you could just submerge this in water and you will get some hydration on those roots, but it also means that it can kind of perspire some of the water, and it won't get too damp around this, and it will slowly let some water out, and it won't get moldy in there.
And you have some of our other bags next to you that also have the same thing, right? The perforated holes, so you can do that.
Exactly. So, again, like this is one of our bleeding hearts. This one's called Bacchanal, and this again is they're perforated bags. So that's just packed in a little bit of peat moss. It's 100% dormant in there. But as Cody's and again, if you submerge this whole thing in water, that peat moss in there is the standard growing medium in horticulture, so it's very inert. It's going to hold nutrition well. So you could plant everything that's in here, peat moss and root, when you're planting, and it'll be very happy in there.
Yeah, the peat moss holds water really well. So I make sure that's always in the hole with the roots, and then it's just going to hold any little excess moisture around the roots until the plant gets established.
My number one tip is to mark what you're planting, because some of the dormant things, like let's say butterfly flower or the milkweed, it takes a long time for it to show its face. And if you plant it somewhere in a spot, you might lose track of it. Just like mark it, tag a rock right next to it, something that you'll know that this is where that is. So you can watch for the growth, because sometimes dormant things take a while to wake up, especially because milkweed right now isn't even coming to life that's already established. It's still in its dormant state until the soil warms up.
Absolutely. And some things that we sell at Veseys, such as foxgloves, they're biennials. So if you're starting those from seed, they won't even flower until year 2. So can't stress enough how useful tagging your plants in the garden can be.
All right, next question. Can dormant roots be stored before planting? And if so, for how long, and how would I store them? So I assume if they get this order, but they're like, I have to go away for the week, what should I do?
Right. I always tell growers and customers, if you have like a unfinished basement or a little cold room in your basement or a wood room, that's probably the best place to put it. Somewhere dark, somewhere cool with a stable climate, that would be the best bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you wanted to give it a bit of a head start too, don't be afraid to just put it in a pot with some potting soil, give it a good water, and just let it sit outside in either a cold frame, a shady part of your garden, somewhere where it's not going to get full sun, but it also won't get full shade. And after a week or two, it should start to wake up, and then you can plant that whole thing in the garden.
Now, is your advice the same for, let's say they got this full speed ahead cedar in the mail versus that is dormant roots, that bag? I forget what you said that was.
Oh, so the bleeding heart.
Right.
Yeah. So, pretty much. So now if you're getting something like the full speed hedge, it's a hardy cedar, so you can pretty much keep that outside as long as you're keeping it well watered. One thing you don't want to happen is you don't want it to dry out. So again, the dormant plant material versus the live plant material, just different needs. The cedar, it's going to handle the wind fine. It's going to handle the changes in temperature pretty well. But what it can't abide is drying out. So just make sure that if you are going to have it sitting somewhere outside, totally okay. Just make sure it doesn't dry out.
All right, we got our first question from the public. It's from Annie, and I love this question because this is something that I wanted to talk about on this live. What bulbs or other flowers/plants do you recommend planting to help biodiversity and pollinators in early spring? And I think this is a great question because
it's a great question.
People love no mow May, and they have the intention of helping out those pollinators. But if you just have grass, not mowing it isn't really helping them in any way.
No. Yeah.
It's really about like establishing flowers that are going to be there. So what do you recommend for the bees and biodiversity in early spring?
Well, there's a few things you can do. Planting fall bulbs is a great way to get an early flush of flowers in the garden. So right now, our crocuses are already going over. They're already losing their flowers, and it's just the beginning of May. So they've been full of bees. And honeybees, local bees like the black bee, they love that kind of stuff. Early flowering shrubs and trees, magnolia is a great early flowering tree, super for biodiversity. Forsythia is a shrub that's excellent for that. Witch hazel is another one that's really good.
Grape hyacinths are another really good one too.
Yeah,
bees love them.
Absolutely, and they're early flowering, and yeah, I can highly recommend.
And then like those really really late or early days of spring, like even some like snowdrops too.
Oh yeah, I mean snowdrops. We have a bunch. They do very well. Snowdrops, snowflakes. Muscari, daffodils, tulips. They look beautiful, and they're very important food sources. If you don't have a huge garden, one thing we were speaking about before was Tara doing a bit of a wildflower meadow. This is one of the best things you can do for biodiversity in your garden because you have a mix of annuals, perennials, biennials, and over time, wildflowers just from the area will pop up in there. And yeah, I think there was a study put out that if you have a small space, the best thing you can do for biodiversity is a meadow.
Yeah. Once you get them established, they're basically no maintenance, and you can just enjoy them and let the insects enjoy them.
And they're so beautiful, it's just teeming with flowers, and you can hear buzzing coming off of them. So if you're like me and you love insects, love bees, bugs, then a meadow is very great. We have a lot of really great wildflower mixes that you can check out, and the more bugs you're introducing into your garden, the more birds you're going to get in your garden. You need the prey for predator species such as birds to show up. So if you want to have lots of bird song in your garden, you're going to want some bugs too.
Yes.
All right, we got another question. It's from Heidi. She says, a friend in Ottawa has lovely tulips that are being cut off. The blossoms are still in the ground. Nothing is eating them. Any ideas? Now, I think I'll handle this one because I had this problem last year, and you're probably not going to like the answer, but at my house, it was rats. And I'm very sorry. And I'm not even sure why they were cutting off my tulips. I don't know if they were trying to get to the bulb, if they were eating some of the stem. They were ignoring the beautiful flower, and it was rats that were cutting off my tulips. They left the daffodils, they left all the muscari. It was literally just my tulips, and I had to set rat traps for them.
I'm assuming like any little critter, like squirrels, chipmunks, that sort of thing, like if there's no other food source, they're going to find something.
Yeah, rats and mice this time of year is when they're really, really hungry.
Yeah.
And so you may see those little plastic spirally tree wraps, they're called, around your trees. This is the season that those are really important because they'll eat tulips. They'll go through like young oak trees, they love that, the young saplings. There's not a lot of food going around right now, so this is probably what happened to the tulips.
Yeah, I've got tulips coming up, and I watch them every day because I'm like on Bloom Watch, and I saw that like somebody ate off the bloom, and I don't think it was a rat. I think it was maybe a mouse or a vole. But they just chewed. I can see they left half of it, so it's going to bloom half a tulip when it finally comes out.
So annoying. Like, you're so close to seeing an opening, and they're just like, I'm going to take this from you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that when you're allowing wildlife into your garden, you kind of have to take the rough with the smooth a little bit.
That's a good point.
I have the same thing. I go out. We go on our plant walks every time we go home. What's popping up? And my crocuses, same thing. They're just kind of half hanging down. Something's had a little munch off of them, but I guess flowers are for everyone to enjoy, even the mice.
Yeah, Heidi said, "Oh, that's gross," and it is. And I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you. I was very surprised because we live in the city, and I wouldn't have believed it was a rat until I actually looked out and saw it, and I was overwhelmed. So I do have an email question. It's from Bill. He says, a large portion of my backyard is shaded by mature trees. What can I plant besides hostas? Which is a great question.
It is a great question. So we have some examples here, but 2 good rules of thumbs for anywhere that's really, really shaded. Early spring bulbs, flowering bulbs, or anything that's foliar and not producing flowers. So anything that typically produces flowers needs a lot more sun. And the things that do well in shade that do produce flowers are flowering early enough in the season before the trees get their leaves, so they're getting enough sun.
And the sun's still down a little bit lower, so it's not doing the same kind of high sun. It's doing a lower sun.
Yep, exactly.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, if it's a deciduous tree, these early flowering bulbs are fantastic because they go through their whole life cycle practically before there are any leaves on the trees. So daffodils are a classic. They are beautiful flowers. They look great in a woodland setting. Same with snowdrops and snowflakes, crocuses, muscari, and they're very happy in a woodland. They like those kind of dappled shade, kind of moist environments. This is called a Helleborus, and this is a woodland flower. It's very, very beautiful. It's very statuesque. It has these kind of nodding flower heads here, and they're super beautiful, and they don't require a lot of light, nor do they like a lot of light. They would get scorched. So if you have a big shady tree, it's an opportunity to plant something like this, and it'll really thrive there.
And back to one of our previous questions too, like to early flowering things.
Yeah.
I have heliobores at home right now from here that are all flowering right now.
I love that you have the coral bells on the table because this is one of my favorites because I don't know if you can see, but that's purple. And the leaves are going to stay purple. They do flower later in the summer. But if you want to pop a color, the coral bells, love the shade. First thing in spring when everything else is brown, these are still holding their color, and I love them.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Sometimes it's really nice, besides planting for flower, you can also plant for texture, and if you have a woodland garden, same like hostas, they're more known for their foliage than their flowers. Heuchera, coral bells is a great example of that. Another is like ferns, cinnamon ferns, which we also sell. They look absolutely beautiful, and they're happiest under a tree. We do a lot of planting underneath trees, and it looks so good.
Pig squeak is another really good one, like that really waxy, shiny foliage.
I just love it. Who doesn't love the name? Who doesn't want to plant something called pig squeak?
I know, right? And 2 staples we haven't mentioned: bleeding hearts, and astilbes.
Astilbes, their plumes are so magical, and astilbes are perfect for that.
They really are.
Let's see. Oh, Rhonda says, almost every year the deers in my area eat my tulips. I'm so glad we don't have deer. I don't know if you know, but we're on Prince Edward Island, and we don't have any deer.
No. We're lucky that way.
Yeah, I don't know how people have big gardens and deal with deers.
If you do have a problem with deer, a good way to deter them is to get some blood meal and just kind of sprinkle it around your early flowering things. Because it is dried, organic matter. A lot of prey animals don't like that smell. But there is a downside, is that sometimes you might get skunks or raccoons who are attracted to that. But, take one with the other.
And
try it out and see what happens.
A lot of the deer repellent is capsicum, which is the spicy part of the pepper. So, I mean, you could spray, like chili powder mixed with, or cayenne powder mixed with water on some of your plants. It shouldn't burn the leaves, maybe stick around the grass. But if they bite it, it'll be spicy.
The worst thing that's going to come from is steam's going to come out of their ears.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing that's going to come from it.
Unless you find a deer that likes spicy food, then they might keep coming back.
Yeah, that's right.
That's true. They'll be on the hot ones next.
Yeah.
All right, Stephanie wants to know, this is great, why are my heliobore blooms pointing towards the ground?
That's a great question. So heliobores flower very, very early spring when it's, we could have very cold rains. So they're facing down, so when it's raining, it's not losing its pollen into the flowers. It's protecting all that pollen that's inside.
Yeah, and they're, so this is a variety called New York Night, and as you can see, they're nodding. This is kind of their habit. There are some varieties out there that have more of an upturned habit. Particularly, there's a series called the Gold series. In our climate, they're not as hardy, so they're going to be a bit more of a challenge to keep alive. But that might be something that we look at in the future.
I was going to say, I think they're working on some selective breeding to have flowers that are facing up more or more. Kind of face on, so you can see them a little bit better.
Yeah. But as you can see, they do nod a little bit, but it's not too much. And if you have, say, a couple of these planted with a few bleeding hearts, maybe a nice statuesque grass, and everything is a little drooping, lackadaisical. It gives it a very romantic feel. Especially at the base of a big tree or in a wooded setting.
Especially when you're in the garden, and you want to see what they look like, and you kind of get like underneath it, and you got to prop it up and like romantic as in like getting real close.
Yeah, absolutely. Get real intimate.
Yes.
Another thing you do is if you do have any raised beds, you can put them in there so they are up a little bit higher, so they're not looking down as much. Maybe like a sloped area in the back of your place.
That's a great point.
So you can see them. I have another question here from Nathan. He says, any tips on indoor growing? What types of plants can survive indoors?
So most plants will survive indoors, but if you're doing like grow lights, like some of the grow lights that we carry, most crops and plants do best either being started underneath those kind of lights or any crops that are just like grown for their foliage and harvested for the foliage, just because it takes less energy to get the foliage than it does for fruit and flowers. So, kales, arugulas, lettuces, that sort of thing are the best crops.
And there's probably nothing stopping you from putting like pansies and geraniums.
Oh, absolutely not. They do totally fine. Yeah, that's how we start all of ours for trials.
Yeah, and there's nothing stopping you from keeping one indoors all year round.
No,
absolutely. And you can even try your hand at doing some bonsai.
We're actually doing the Sweetie Snacks peppers and the Little Birdie series tomatoes underneath lights in our store this year.
And they're looking really, really,
they're
really
thriving.
Nice.
Yeah, they're just taking right off.
Darren has a question. He says, is perennial grass a good choice for a living fence? What varieties do you recommend?
I like grass for living fences, especially because if you can get the flower plumes too, they make really, really good winter interest as well.
Absolutely.
They're going to be there all winter. I like grasses. They're short, they're tall. We carry a little zebra, I think grows about 3-4 feet tall.
Yep, and we've also got this one is kind of a standard. It's called Carl Forrester. It's a feather reed grass, and this one gets 6 feet tall. Again, it does get the large flower heads, which in Canada in the winter we get any flowers that we can see are just priceless, and you would be surprised how well a grass like this can withstand heavy snow and wind, and it really gives a nice architectural element to your garden when there's nothing else really there in flower.
And we have that grass across the road right by our trial beds, and we get 100-kilometer-hour winds every second day in the winter.
Pretty much, yeah.
And it's still standing, and if you were doing it for a privacy fence, you'd have to plant them kind of close together for full privacy, but you could limit the view, and
Absolutely.
It would last almost all year.
Yep, absolutely.
And everyone would love it. The birds
They're super
would
low
love
maintenance too, because they're not going to spread. They're clumping, so they're not going to spread very much from where they're planted either.
Yeah, and it's really good for plant combinations. So if you have something like this Carl Forrester feather reed grass, and you have that planted in a place that maybe catches some sun, and then in front of it you plant maybe some Lucifer crocosmia, and then what you're going to get is when the sun going through and it's just backlighting them, and you'll get the gold and the red going together. And not only is it really beautiful, but it's super low maintenance. Like you don't even once it's established, you barely even have to water them. So.
Yeah, they're awesome. I love them. I say it every year. The older I get, the more I love perennial grass and decorative grasses.
Same.
Like, I don't know what it is. Just like every year I'm like, oh, you're so beautiful. Steve says, I was thinking about adding a pear tree. Do I need more than one? And how long until I can harvest from it?
Yep. So you do need more than one. You need at least 2 trees that are flowering at the same time in order to set fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And pears can be, they can take a little longer sometimes to fruit than some other fruit trees. I think there's an old poem that says, walnuts and pears are planted for your heirs. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but you can get if you're worried about things taking too long to fruit, get a dwarfing or semi-dwarf variety pear, because they're going to fruit much earlier. They're not as long-lived as the standard varieties that are going to grow 20, 30 feet tall. But you can expect fruit much sooner, maybe 4 or 5 years rather than 6 or 7 years.
Now I want a nice soft pear to eat, and we're like months away from that now.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but our patent pear tree is self-pollinating. The other one that we carry does require the pollinator, but if you did only want one, you could do that one.
You could. And if you want to improve it too, it doesn't hurt to get another one that's also flowering at the same time. It'll just lift it up even more.
I think you should have all the pears.
Yeah.
I want all of the pears. All right. So Steve, when you get your pears in a couple of years, come visit us. We will trial them for you and let you know how good they are.
Yes.
Darlene bought a bunch of plants from us during COVID, and she didn't account for how much they would spread out. Should I move things now or wait until fall? That's a problem that a lot of people have.
Yeah, so we're just getting to the end of that point where plants are starting to break dormancy. So if you're going to move plants, yesterday was better.
Yeah.
After that, I would wait until late next winter or early next spring to move plants. You want to move them when they're dormant.
Yeah, or at the end of the season. And a lot of things like a bleeding heart, it's just about to flower. You wouldn't want to move that now because you're going to interrupt that flowering process that's happening. Something like a hibiscus that is still dormant, I would maybe move that now.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you couldn't move stuff, at any time during the growing season, but it's just less stressful for the plant in early spring.
Absolutely, and sometimes it'll come down to the plant. Some things, if you dig it up while it's about to flower, that's a wrap on that plant, because they're very sensitive and hard to grow. If you have something like a daylily, these things are impossible to kill. I always say that if you manage to kill a daylily on your property, you're in the wrong line of work, because you should be in pest management because you have a talent. Daylilies, you can mow them. You can, some plants you have to be really tender with and really split apart the roots. Daylilies, just split them with your shovel anytime, plunk them in the ground, and I'm sure they will come up like roses the next year.
They're like tough love.
Yeah.
And if you have any daylilies at your house you want to get rid of, just let me know. Because I'd love to start collecting, a whole bed of daylilies.
I will have some for you, for sure.
Yeah, and if you are moving something, even if you move it in the fall, just understand that it might impact next year's growth cycle. This one,
totally.
Your roses might not set fruit. Your blooms, although it is technically a fruit tree.
Yeah.
It can change things. Let's see. Julie asks, my rose bush has become a little out of control and it isn't flowering as much. What can I do to get it to flower again?
So you can do some regenerative cutting it back, and then probably some nice fertilizing, top dressing with some organic matter. Those would be the best things.
Absolutely. I find that a lot of people, they think that, roses, they must be really hard to keep alive. They must be really sensitive. But nothing could be further from the truth. They're extremely tough plants. It's one of the reasons why I love them so much. And if you had a plant like a rose that was really out of control, like, not flowering, just a big shrubby mess, you could cut it pretty close to the ground, like 30 centimeters from the ground. Just mow it straight across. Do it in early spring, hopefully a little bit before the leaves really start to come out, and you'll be shocked just how quickly it'll come back. And even this year, maybe next year, it'll reward you with a massive flush of flowers.
Yeah.
Jeremy, do you remember last year when you and Nathan hurt yourselves pruning all those bushes
Yes.
at work? You can't even tell that you pruned anything back. They are back already with a vengeance.
Yes, exactly. It's one of those things that, you can treat them a little rough and they will just reward you with vigor, especially an old rose. I know this because some people want to remove a rose entirely from their property, and that is a challenge. Yes.
Good luck. That goes along with the daylilies,
Exactly.
or for Cynthia.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned about Nathan and Jeremy removing those roses last year, because I look at them every time I'm walking to the greenhouse, and they were so overgrown that from halfway down there was no growth there. Everything was just on top. And since you guys have done that, it's starting to fill in more in the front, so it's just all full now instead of just getting just on the top.
Yeah.
They were like so tall and they were like hunched over.
Yeah, flopping.
But like when you guys pruned them and then we put the fresh mulch on, like they were perfect.
Yeah, it looks great. It's very satisfying. I just find I personally love pruning things. It's probably my favorite garden activity. And Nathan, he's one of our summer students at Veseys. Shout out Nathan. And he is this is one of his first big tasks. And got some scratches, got some thorns, but this is how you learn.
Yeah, Nathan started back on Monday. We are so excited to have him back. So Chris says, I planted some Shasta daisies a few years ago and they did well. Now they're growing in a ring with nothing growing in the center. What gives? And I can hear Chris saying that, like the what gives.
Yeah.
So they're growing like donut style?
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like it's probably overgrown at that point and needs to be split.
Mm-hmm.
It's just outgrowing its space. You just need to make room for more plants, split it in 3 or 4, and find some new homes for the other pieces.
Absolutely, turn a minus into a plus. A lot of perennials, especially vigorous perennials, will act this way because they want to grow out. They're growing out. So after a few years, that middle is just overgrown, filled with dead plant material. But you can lift it up in the fall once the foliage has died back. You can split it, and hey presto, you've got a whole bunch of new plants for your property or your friends or neighbors.
I find hydrangeas are really bad for doing that circle thing where that middle bit is, not growing anything.
Yep.
And everything is growing in a circle around it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jana says, great advice. I have a yellow heritage rose that could be 45 years old now. They get so rangy. Yeah, 45 years old. That sounds beautiful.
That's impressive. It may very well be a rose that's not in cultivation anymore. Mm-hmm. So definitely take a lot of photos of that. If there are any, rose grower Facebook groups, definitely post that, because one of the problems or one of the issues in horticulture is if ever a plant kind of falls out of fashion, it can fall out of cultivation very quickly, and so we lose all sorts of different varieties of plants, whether it's vegetable seeds or apple trees or roses. So this is one way that you can conserve and help protect these heritage variety of roses is to take cuttings, give them to your friends, put them up on Facebook Marketplace, and just, make sure that we're going to keep that rose surviving for future generations.
Yep.
Yeah, we actually had a customer message us on Facebook a couple of weeks ago. She was cleaning out her parents' place, and she found old Veseys seeds in the attic. I think they're in the attic, and they're like 60 years old, and like old seed packets, and she's going to grow them, and I can't wait to see the progress on them. She did offer them back to us, and I was just like, we have so much to grow.
Yeah.
You grow it. Tell us all about it.
So cool.
Us three will always want to see your pictures of whatever
all
you're
the
growing.
time, please. Yes.
Absolutely.
Like, share them to our Facebook group. If no one likes them, we will like them. Yes. Patsy has a question, which is a really good, timely question. When is the best time to move your tulips and daffodils, spring or fall?
The best time to do it is after all the leaves are browned and they're dyed back to the ground, basically. That's the best time to do it. You never want to cut off leaves when they're green. The plant's still actively growing and putting energy back into the bulb to flower the following spring. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that's all gone. Once that's all gone, they've gone dormant. You can dig them up and you can move them wherever you need to move them.
Yep, great point. And also another reason why you should mow your the leaves. Once the flowering is done, don't think, I'm going to clean up the garden and remove the leaves. Let them die back entirely, because that's going to put all the energy into that bulb. If you want to have that bulb come back bigger and better every single year, you also want to make sure that you're breaking off the seed head, so it's not putting the energy into those seeds. If you want that tulip to spread, then leave the seed head on. That flower won't be as big or beautiful next year, but other tulips will grow into a little bunch.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of people are, I see the messages and the emails coming in now about like, my tulips aren't blooming, I moved them last year, and if you move them prematurely, they may not have been able to put all their energy into the roots, maybe they didn't fertilize it, maybe the new location isn't healthy soil, it's nutrient, what's the word? Lacking.
Deficient.
Yeah, deficient, there we go.
Yeah. Actually, on that note, I will say we have...
I was like, that's holding
Is
that up.
Is that going to tip? I'm not sure. So we do sell a bulb fertilizer at Veseys, and I know that in the trials we use this a lot, and we do sell a lot of this stuff. So basically, it's just a standard 996 fertilizer, but it's slow release. So it's formulated so that when you're planting your bulbs, be it in the fall or in the spring, they're going to slowly feed them the nutrients that they want over the course of that year. So you don't have to give them a regular weekly feeding like you would with your vegetables or anything like that. So if you're planting them in the fall, they're gonna keep feeding it all through the fall and spring. And if you're feeding it now, if you're planting them now, it'll feed them all summer long.
Yeah. And would you actively, let's say that you're looking at your tulips and you find they're a little slow coming up, would you fertilize them now, or is it too late?
You could fertilize them now. It might give it the boost that it needs, but there's a bunch of different factors going towards whether or not something might flower. So if you're finding that your tulip has come up all the way and it hasn't flowered, don't worry. Give them a good top dressing of compost or mulch. Give them a little bit of fertilizer, and they will come up probably next year.
There's usually a lot of factors that go into why plants and bulbs aren't flowering, so sometimes it's just easier to take a step back, look at the environment, look at the soil, maybe what happened the previous 6 months, the winter, that sort of thing, and then kind of break it down, process of elimination, what might be causing the plants not to flower too.
And it is really hard, because someone will be like, why didn't my tulips bloom? And it's just like, well, let me ask you 10 questions first, because like there's no one answer.
Yes.
And I know I was talking to someone on a local Facebook group, and they were saying about their Forsythia didn't bloom last year, and I was like, I don't think I saw any Forsythia bloom on PEI because we had a really late hard frost, and that would have killed all of the blooms. So like, it may not be you, it may be something that happened in the environment that is affecting everyone. But how often do you go to work and be like, so how's your Forsythia doing?
Yeah. We're the only ones who do that.
We are. I can't imagine someone going to like a government building and be like, so is your Forsythia in bloom? But yeah, like sometimes it's environmental. Like if it's a wet year, like maybe all of our squash is rotting because there's just too much rain. So you should ask people, post it online, ask us, join us every 2 weeks. Yeah. We love to talk about this stuff.
And on that too, the big question this year is, why haven't my bulbs bloomed? In Atlantic Canada, we had such a mild winter this year that the soil actually never froze solid for any good amount of time. And bulbs need that cold snap in order to initiate flowering. So any flowers that did come up this year either came up just at the soil surface or just a little bit higher. That's pretty much what happened this year in the Maritimes.
Yeah, exactly. So, a lot of the bulbs, the reason why they're so easy to ship and why they're such amazing flowers is because, here, I'll just pop one open here. So this is a bulb. This is our pineapple explosion. It's a pineapple lily.
They're so fun.
Yeah, Google it if you've never seen one. They're really, really neat. We have them in the catalog for the first time this year. It's basically a big, wide lily that pops up with this funky, like Whitney Houston hairdo kind of at the top, and it looks like a big pineapple. And but the cool thing about bulbs is, when you're putting the seed in the ground, that thing has to create a whole new plant. Whereas with a bulb, the plant's already in there. If you were to cut this open and look at it under a microscope, there's a stem, there's the flower bud, there are the roots. Everything is in this. It's almost like this is the flowers already made. However, some things have a certain requirement called chill hours. So if you look at something like a daffodil needs 12 to 16 weeks of cold temperature in order to flower. So on my property, we had a really big thaw early, and then because my property gets so flooded, a lot of my daffodil bulbs were just underwater that whole time, so they're not getting the right amount of chill hours, and then also they're underwater when usually there would be no water permeating the soil because it's frozen. So all of these things can add up to not flowering. But don't fear, because if the leaves have come out, there's a really good chance they're going to flower next year. Just, again, give them a feed, give them a little bit of compost, and don't mow those leaves too early.
Sometimes I get jealous of the people who live in the zones Vancouver, 7B and stuff.
Oh, don't even get me started on that.
Because they don't have to dig up their glads and their dahlias and stuff, but they can't plant daffodils in the ground. Tulips are an annual for them. They can't overwinter them because they don't have the cold hours that it takes to get those going.
Yes, or apples.
Yep.
Some you go to some places in the world and they can grow mangoes and oranges, very exciting, but they can't grow apples. They can't grow blueberries, things that we more take for granted here.
Carolyn has a question. I do believe it's about this pineapple lily. Can this bulb stay in the ground all year round?
It can. So this is...
What's that hardy to?
Probably like a zone 4 or 5.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's zone 4 or 5. Certain bulbs, dahlias are famous for this. You do have to dig them up and store them over the winter. But gladiolus is another one. If you want to keep that, you're going to have to dig them up. The eucomis, the pineapple explosion lily, you don't have to worry about that.
Ranunculus, I wish we could grow them year round.
Yeah,
I see everyone starting them. Ugh, jealous. So another spring question. My daffodils aren't coming up well like they did last year. Is there something I can give them? I guess we kind of talked about that, about the fertilizer.
Mm-hmm. And another good indication that this year a lot of bulbs were heaved out of the ground this year. We didn't have that one solid freeze to keep everything in. We had the freeze thaw all winter, and it just pushed everything out.
Exactly.
Our trial beds, all in our display beds at work, all of our garlic and bulbs we planted, they're all on the soil surface.
Yeah, and then we had a bit of a warm spring at the beginning, and we all thought, wow, summer is here. And then we were getting snow the last few days. And so all of those things that were like, wow, it's spring, I can come out, they're now getting frost damage. So, for early spring flowering bulbs, this is not an ideal situation. And again, a lot of them don't like having wet feet. They don't like sitting in water, which normally you wouldn't have to worry about because the thaw doesn't last for that long. But if we're an extended period of precipitation and thaw, then some of those bulbs can simply rot in the ground if they're in a low area.
Yeah. We had a customer call into our call center last week, and she was questioning about her tulips. She had purposely bought tulips that were early blooming, mid blooming, and late blooming, and they're all coming up out of the ground right now at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's just indicative to the season that we had.
Yep.
They might not all bloom the same time. They might be coming up, but it may take them longer to, rise up, open up. But, they say that they're late blooming, but we can't control the weather.
No.
And when we have a season like this, you're just going to have to roll with it. And then sometimes we'll have remember in 2015, we still had snow on the ground at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And there was not a spring bloom to be had at this point last year.
Not even the early flowering tulips were.
No.
And we're kind of at the point right now, we're moving out of an El Nino couple of years and into an El Nino. So this summer, they're expecting it's going to be very hot and dry. And then after the summer, things should probably go back to average for the next, 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, because we had a ridiculously wet summer last year. And we didn't even have it as bad as our neighbors in Nova Scotia who experienced all that flooding.
Yep.
So we just do what the Mother Nature.
Yep.
We're trying. It's always a battle.
Yes.
Have to roll with the punches.
That's right.
If you're expecting a hot, dry winter, maybe plant a grape, or a hot, dry summer. I mean, plant a grape.
Yeah.
You know.
I think it's going to be a dry summer. My dad's a potato farmer, and he said it was going to be a dry summer, and he was like, enjoy the rain now. You're going to wish you had it later.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting.
It's always a careful what you wish for type of scenario.
I know,
Yes.
but like, have you ever met a farmer that is 100% happy with the weather?
I know.
Like, it's never going to happen. It's either going to be too wet, too hot, too dry, too
Yeah.
cold.
Yeah.
It came too soon. It's too windy.
They sound like me when I'm cranky when I'm sick.
Every farmer anywhere. So listen, everyone watching, send us our questions. That's all the questions that I have. While we wait for that, is there anything on the table that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, so we have a few things that we pulled out of the greenhouse today that are kind of exciting. So this one is very cool. So this is called Full Speed Ahead, which is just an awesome name. It's a Thuja occidentalis, otherwise known as an arbor vitae. It's a type of cedar, and this is very neat. We've only had this for a couple years. But basically, this is what's called a sport. So what that means is it's an accidental cross between a couple different cedars that has novel characteristics. What does that mean? Well, this grows 3 times faster than a normal arbor vitae, hence the name Full Speed Ahead. So while, we've all put in lines of trees and, waited for a hedge to grow for many years, this is a very special cedar because it can grow 3 to 4 feet per year if it's planted in good conditions. So after a period of 5 years, you could have almost 20 feet tall hedges if the conditions are right, well watered, fertilized. So for a tree, that's huge. So this is probably one of, if not the most popular item we have in the catalog, just because it's so effective. You can get a privacy screen very quickly, or you can use them the way I do, which is you can kind of put them on their own or at corners near your house, and you have that kind of columnar look, like in like an Italian Renaissance garden. They're very tall, very skinny. So when you're planting them, if you want to have them in a full hedge, you can plant them 2 feet apart, and within 5 years, you don't have to look at your neighbors anymore, which is kind of nice.
I'm looking at, just for everyone watching, I'm looking at the new growth here, which is anything on here that's not brown. So this one branch here, that's at minimum 6 inches right there. So that's already, since it's started growing this year, it's grown 6 inches.
Yeah, I swear we've had them in the greenhouse 2 days, and you can almost hear them growing. They're that fast. And one thing I will say is that the smell is amazing. It's kind of very citrusy, and it has that really nice kind of almost like a balsam fir, that citrusy Christmas tree smell. So yeah, I can highly recommend this Full Speed Ahead.
I love the picture in the catalog with that sweet little old lady standing next to it.
Yeah. It's very interesting. So basically, there's a gentleman. He was a cedar breeder in Georgia, and he came out of retirement at the age of 85 after finding this in his nursery. He in his backyard, actually. He came out of retirement and started a nursery completely dedicated to Full Speed Ahead because he knew he had a hit on his hands, and it's certainly been very popular.
The ultimate retirement dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
Janice wants to know, what zone are they hardy in? I think those are good till like 2 or 3.
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's hardy to zone 3, but you can go to Veseys.com just to double check. But yeah, Full Speed Ahead is what it's called.
Yep.
Yeah, and we actually had some that were still in the pots. They spent their entire year last year in these pots. They never got planted, and you dropped them into the ground, and they overwintered, and they're still happy.
Yeah, so I guess that's a good show if you get any plants late in the season. All I did last year, they kind of showed up in September. We let them grow in their pots, for a couple of months. Then when we started getting frost, I just dug some holes, sunk that whole pot in, level with the top of the pot, backfilled them, and that's where they sat all winter. They're still there now. They're all growing. They're still fine. And then I'll wait probably a couple more weeks, and then I'll dig them up, and they'll continue growing. We'll find a new home for them.
Absolutely. Like, if you don't think you can grow a tree, you can grow this tree.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. Another cool thing we have here, this is
But the At Last?
Yeah, so this is a rose called At Last. It's so called because it's a relatively new rose. It's called At Last because it's got an incredible scent, like an old-fashioned rose. It also flowers from late spring until frost. You can see it's ready to flower right now. It's got beautiful salmon orange tones, a bit peachy tones that get lighter as it gets older. And it also has incredible disease resistance. So having all of those things in a rose made the breeder go, "At last!" So hence the name At Last Rose. So whenever I pass this, I always have At Last by Etta James playing in my head, because this is a rose that's a doer. I like things in my garden that work really hard and they earn their place in the garden. At Last is one of those.
At last, I have one I can take home. Thank you.
Oh, At Last, I think it's for me. I do feel bad that I can tell from, I got the thing going here, they can see how pretty that is.
And that's like, some plants, when they say orange, they're more red, more yellow. That is like orange peach color.
Okay, let me see if I can bring it up so people can see it. I have no idea if they can see that.
But it's a beautiful color.
Yeah.
I tried. I promise you, it's beautiful.
I see another new product sitting here on the table as well. This guy here.
Yes, so this is called Paint the Town Magenta. So this is a dianthus. It is a very wonderful ground cover, and the smell is just incredible. So if you're ever a fan of carnations, that kind of clovey smell, this has it in spades. And when I walk by this in the greenhouse, it just fills with aroma. It's got this bright magenta flower, and this is hard to see, but this has got about 20 flower buds just in this one little plug. So when this goes in the ground, this is going to be a mat of flowers.
I was going to say, it's a nice hardy ground cover.
It is, yeah, and it'll come back year on year. It's, for something you want to just pick and put behind your ear or put in your button or put in your hair, this is a great candidate for that.
We have this, we call it the wall bed, from where the main building is at Veseys, leading up into our greenhouse. There's this raised long bed, and it's completely naturalized with muscari and starflower, and there is dianthus that hangs out over a concrete cylinder in the wall, and it's gorgeous. I love it. It's so pretty, and if you chop it back, you might get a second bloom off of it. Might.
Yeah.
Julie says, will 6 hours of morning sun with dappled sun in the afternoon or 6 hours of afternoon sun be enough for grandiflora rose?
So typically anything that's full sun is 8 hours plus. It sounds like you're going to be right on the cusp of that. It's hard to say yes or no. Your best bet is to try it. If it doesn't work, then the following spring, while it's still dormant, then you can dig it up and move it to someplace else.
And what would happen if you planted a rose in a place that didn't have enough sun? Let's say it was 7 hours of sun, not your 8. Mm-hmm. Is it going to bloom?
It depends, but it probably will. So a lot of plants, their ideal is full sun, a lot of plants. But if they don't have complete sun, full sun, they may just flower a little bit less. They may just be a little less vigorous than they would be if they're in their ideal condition. But, something like a rose, you'd be surprised where it can survive. I have a few old roses on my property, and they're right underneath deciduous trees, kind of between a very old maple and an old pine, and they flower very well. So I would say, plant it.
Yeah, you should try it. If it doesn't work, move it.
Yeah, totally.
Or burn everything down so it'll get the sun.
Yeah, then you have lots of places to plant things.
What else you got there? I see one of my favorite hostas sitting on the table.
Yes, so we're all big fans of hostas, and this is a very interesting one that is a relatively new addition. It's called curly fries. So there's a lot of hostas out there that are very samey. This one is very novel. You can just barely see it, but the leaves are very rippled and curly, and it's quite small. It's not going to get much bigger than this. Maybe it'll get to 12 or 36 inches at maturity, but this is a small variety of hosta. So it'd be great in a container or in a plant combination. Yep.
Think of a crinkle cut French fry, and then imagine it as a hosta leaf, and then that's that.
Yeah, exactly. And apparently they're edible. I just found this out.
Yeah, we found that in our last live.
Yeah, we found that out like a few weeks ago, so we're going to be eating hostas this
Yeah,
year.
exactly. We're adding that to the trial list.
I will happily eat hostas.
Next catalog, we might have the flavor profiles of all the different hostas.
It would be really fun to do a live while we were trialing food.
That's a good idea.
That's a great idea.
I don't know, but would people want to watch us eat? We could do it Hot Ones style, though.
Let's do watermelons.
Instead of like
We'll do
10
the
different
chilies.
chicken wings,
Yeah.
we can do like 10 different green beans.
Yeah.
And ask like hard-hitting questions at each one.
For people who might be questioning it, if you eat 10 different green beans, you're going to be like, no, that tastes like a green bean. They do not taste like green beans. They are all totally different, and I think you can both vouch for that.
I will never forget when Julie was eating the green beans and she was munching on them, and it's like, hold on, we have 28 different green beans to eat. Stop eating the green beans.
A couple of years ago, 28 different beans, 28 different flavors.
Yeah, and if you think they all taste the same, they don't. And when we say it is the top pick, we mean it. We all ate it. We all agree.
Yep.
Yeah, it is true that there are days occasionally in the summer where we have to go inside and we have to taste test 10 or 20 different watermelons. So it's a hard gig, but it's a living.
You know, someone has to do it. Someone has to do the hard jobs, you know.
Send your thoughts and prayers. But the staff love to see us. We've upscaled. We have this tray that we do. We put 8 different varieties, and we come around and we're like, start at number 1. Tell me what you think.
Yep.
And we do it with carrots, watermelons.
Yep. We do it with everything except hot peppers. There's select few people in the office who are like hot pepper fans, and we go and we hire them, and they're the taste testers.
They are the taste testers, and they're troopers.
Yes.
They are troopers. What else do we have on the table? We got all these grasses.
Got some interesting grasses. Let me see here. So this one is very cool. I think I may have briefly said this. So this is brand new in the catalog. This one is called a Chameleon Little Blue Stem. So it's got this very pretty sort of dark green and sort of white green variegated leaf. But the reason why it's called chameleon is when the weather starts to cool and the temperature changes, this becomes bright burgundy, purple, and pink. So if you have, say, a low border or something like that, it's not going to get very tall. 24 inches is its maximum height. When the fall comes, it is going to go bright purple and red, and it's going to add a lot of visual interest into your garden.
Annie says that you can eat hosta shoots like asparagus, so I know what you are having for supper.
Oh, yum! Another reason to love hostas.
Did we bring one of the bloomerangs here?
Yes. So this is a lilac called Bloomerang. And Cody, do you want to?
I sure will. So bloomerangs, I cannot recommend them enough.
Yeah.
Great name for a lilac. So they're going to bloom once initially early in the season, and then you're going to get a second round of flowering later in the season. Hence the name Bloomerang. Boomerang comes back around. Great name. Can't recommend them enough. If anyone wants a lilac, Bloomerang's the way to go.
Yeah.
For Mother's Day, like this would be the perfect gift for me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And you don't have to prune them back. Like if you want to force your rose bush into a second bloom, oftentimes you have to deadhead them to make it bloom again. This is just going to bloom again for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Although you could cut all the blooms off, put them on your kitchen counter. I love the bloomerang. One of my favorites.
Mine too.
Another cool thing we have, just because the smell is so strong. So this is probably one of my favorite plants in the garden. I kind of have a rule at home when I'm growing any flowers. It's kind of a challenge to myself, is I only grow flowers that have scent. I really love scent in the garden. There's oftentimes we get so busy with gardening that we forget just to go out and enjoy the garden. So, if you have a lot of scent in the garden, just go out and just take a moment just to... it's so easy to say, I got to rake this, I have to remove this, so many chores. Take a second, smell the roses, literally. And this is a black currant. This one's called Consort. Not only are the berries so delicious, and one of the, after a long winter, a fresh black currant, it's just like a shock to the system. It's incredible. And the whole thing, the stem, the leaves, they have that black currant smell, just very... aromatic and just so wonderful. To me, this is summer in a stick.
All right, I've got a question from Lynn, circling back to the lilacs. And I hope you're still with us, Lynn, because we're going to follow up with more questions, because there's no easy answer of anything. She says, I have a mini lilac that's barely living. Any advice? So my first question to you is going to be, is it new or old? And if it's old, are you always removing the suckers at the bottom? What other questions would you ask?
A lot of the time, a prune is the solution. But again, sometimes it comes down to right plant, right place. You know, maybe it's not getting enough moisture where it is. Maybe it's in some shadow. Maybe it's getting too much sun. Maybe the place where it's been planted, if you're in a more of an urban environment, maybe the ground is really, really compacted, or it's got construction materials underneath. So those roots are going down and they're just hitting nothing. So if you've had it there for a few years, it hasn't grown, it's not really flowering, move it somewhere else. And sometimes that's all you have to do.
I think your best bet would be to take some really good pictures of it from years past if you have them, and give us as much detail about the location, the soil, what it's done years past, that sort of thing. Email customer service, in the subject line put Digging Deep, Tara and Cody. Your email will get forwarded to one of us, and then we'll be able to answer your question for you.
Yeah, I love lilacs, but something that Joyce, one of our coworkers, she's very passionate about is, like, you don't remove all the suckers of a lilac, because eventually the one branch of the lilac is going to get tired and it's like done its job for a long, long time, and you want to prune that back and let a baby take over as like the main stock.
Very good point.
So never prune all of them. You can prune some of them, but like letting those little baby ones come out.
Yeah, very good point.
Yeah, Marie wants to know, can we leave the pineapple lily in the ground for the winter?
Sure can.
And the answer was yes. It is hardy to zone 3 to 8. If you are a zone 2, though, you're going to want to dig it up or mulch it, Mulch it, put it in like a well-protected area that's facing south. Like if you have a crook in your house for a garden, maybe that's the best place to put it. Yeah. I love the pineapple lilies. We don't have any at the property.
I think we need to change that. We do now.
All right, so this gives me an idea, because we can do one of those quick little Learn with Veseys videos about how to plant these, because you can't really see it on the live about what it looks like. So yeah, we'll plant these. We'll follow it along so people can see.
Sure.
I'm just going to give it a second just to see if Lynn answers our questions. It is 4 o'clock, but I do want to see what Lynn might have to say. We'll be back. I think we're going to be here again in 2 weeks. We wanted to be in the greenhouse today, but it's a little windy. It's also like rainy. I don't know if you can see that. Rain is much louder in the greenhouse. A little shower sounds like a downpour.
Yes.
So
it's very nice when you're sitting in there, but not when you're recording in there.
Yeah, it would be nice for us. Sometimes it's like, oh my God, it's really raining, and we come outside and it's just like the tiniest little sprinkle.
Yeah.
And then I think after that, when we're here, I think we're going to be back at the main building and hopefully in our greenhouse, because our greenhouse is what, half full of plants?
Yeah, it's going to be half full, and by that time it should be at capacity, and then after that, Digging Deep will start getting into the field.
All right, quickly, Jeremy, what have you been doing for Veseys this past 2 weeks?
So, here at Veseys Bulbs, we've been receiving a lot of our greenhouse stuff, as you can see here, getting the greenhouse up and running.
You're welcome.
Yeah, they gracefully helped us set up the greenhouse, putting new poly on the sides. A lot of greenhouse management comes down to trying to get ahead of any potential pest problems that could pop up. So that means yellow sticky traps, things that, we sell, highly recommend. Anytime you have a greenhouse, if you don't have any pest problems, you should still prepare for it, because, an ounce of prevention is always worth a pound of cure.
Absolutely. Cody, what have you been doing?
Oh, what haven't I been doing? Transplanting has been the number one thing. We've been seeding brassicas, lettuce, peppers, eggplants, some other really fun trial stuff I can't mention, but
We've been transplanting like crazy. Poor Nathan, he started on Monday and he spent the entire day transplanting, and then the next day transplanting, and I think yesterday transplanting.
Yeah, and even today he did a little bit of transplanting.
Yeah, so planting, transplanting. What have I been doing? I've been making videos for you guys. I've been making some infographics that'll be coming out in the next couple weeks. I've been all over the place. I've been transplanting. We had smile cookies today, so I had to make that video of showing everyone the fact that we got to eat smile cookies.
Yep. Oh, we also covered beds across the row with some fabric mulch to help eliminate some of the weeds, so we don't have to use herbicides. We did a lot of that.
I got teased in my coveralls.
Yep. It's been a busy couple weeks.
It's been a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to it. So Lynn did not message back, so that's okay. Lynn, I hope you watch this. Send an email to customer service. Put the subject line, digging deep. It'll get to Cody, Jeremy, or I, and we will answer your questions. If you have questions for the next one, you can always let us know. Even if you can't make it, we want to answer your questions. And just know that we're watching the Facebook page. We're watching all the customer service calls that are coming in, and we're trying to answer all the questions that everybody has. And maybe solve some problems before you even have them.
Yep.
Learn a few things. All right, so we will see you guys right here, maybe in the greenhouse, in 2 weeks, same time. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Thank you.